I would now invite Martha Holt Castle to lead us in our morning's reading.
Hi, this is Dark and Light, Light and Dark by Jackie James. Black mail, black list, black market. Black Monday, black mood, black hearted. Black plague, black mass, black market. Good guys wear white, bad guys wear black. We fear black cats and the dark continent. But it's okay to tell a white lie. Lily white hands are coveted. It's great to be as pure as the driven snow. Angels and brides wear white. Devil's food cake is chocolate. Angel's food cake is white. We shape language and we are shaped by it. In our culture, white is esteemed. It is heavenly, sun-like, clean, pure, immaculate, innocent, and beautiful. At the same time, black is evil, wicked, gloomy, depressing, angry, sullen. Ascribing negative and positive values to black and white enhances the institutionalization of this culture's racism. Let's acknowledge the negative connotations of whiteness. White things can be soft, vulnerable, pallid, and ashen. Light can be blinding, bleaching, enervating. Conversely, we must acknowledge that darkness has a redemptive character, that in darkness there is power and beauty. The dark nurtured and protected us before our birth. Welcome darkness. Don't be afraid of it or deny it. Darkness brings relief from the blinding sun, from scorching heat, from exhausting labor. Night signals permission to rest, to be with our loved ones, to conceive new life, to search our hearts, to remember our dreams. The dark of winter is a time of hibernation. Seeds grow in the dark, fertile earth. The words black and dark don't need to be destroyed or ignored, only balanced and reclaimed in their wholeness. The words white and light don't need to be destroyed or ignored, only balanced and reclaimed in their wholeness. Imagine a world that had only light or dark. We need both, dark and light, light and dark.
Boy, I'll tell you, that Eva never ceases to amaze me. Who knew we'd be treated to a song from Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas this morning? So friends, as we enter into this season of shorter days, longer nights, we might start to feel a palpable shift in our mood. How will the growing darkness affect our mental and our spiritual health? You know, since ancient times, countless traditions have recognized this shift. Solstice celebrations use fire to help bring back the light. Jewish tradition will soon have the Festival of Lights, where candles are lit for Hanukkah. Christians are currently in the period of Advent, waiting for the light of the world to be born on Christmas Day. But this year, as we face down a deadly pandemic that is only getting worse and is affecting so many of us right here in this congregation, a time that the CDC director Robert Redfield called, quote, the most difficult public health period in our history as a nation. Coming darkness this year seems much more terrifying. It's got me thinking about darkness. I wonder, what does that word mean to you? Well, a few years ago, after I graduated from seminary and received my Master's of Divinity degree, I faced just one major and possibly career-ending hurdle. See, if you want to become a Unitarian Universalist minister and wear a stole like this, it is not enough to have simply graduated seminary. No, before you can be ordained, you have to go before the UUA's Ministerial Fellowship Committee, the dreaded MFC. In preparation for this meeting, for this interview, I had to create a 140-page packet filled with essays, deeply personal reflections, academic research papers, internship evaluations, professional letters of recommendation, the results from a 5-day psychological evaluation, and several self-assessments on different areas of ministry. Well, after all that, I was then expected to have read 120 books, books that were in addition to all of the other countless books I'd read for my classes during seminary. And during my MFC interview, after I preached my sermon, I was told that this panel of 8 people could ask me about absolutely anything contained in my packet, anything from those 120 books, or anything else they could think of. A little intimidating. Well, after the interview, they would then rank me from 1 to 5. 1 meaning you're amazing. 2, 3, or 4 meant you were in some level of career purgatory. And 5 meant you will never, ever, ever become a minister. Period. Well, spoiler alert, I passed. But, during the interview, they asked me about a reflection that I had written about my time as a hospital chaplain. I had included the sentence, quote, it was a privilege to walk with folks through the darkness as they neared the end of their lives. At that point, one of the interviewers said, David, tell me about your theology of darkness. I was a bit taken aback. I wasn't quite sure how to answer. I explained that when I think about the divine, I often imagine a campfire that gives off warmth and light, and it comforts all those who choose to sit around it. Yes, darkness exists out in the surrounding woods, and some do choose to leave the light of the fire. Some go out and get lost in the woods, but at the center of our core is a goodness, a light, a fire that is there to hold us and to guide us. This theological construct may sound somewhat similar to you. It is deeply rooted in our faith, particularly our Universalist past. This notion that God is love rather than a punishing, severe God. That, divinity is the center. It's the light of the world. That at the center of all of us and everything is an inherent goodness. Sounds pretty good, right? Yeah, apparently not. See, I was challenged on my answer. Well, why, David, is light associated with goodness? Why is darkness considered negative? One of the black panelists asked me, well, how do you think these dark light associations with good and bad make people of color feel? Well, that moment, I honestly became a bit defensive. Was she implying that I was racist? No, I implored. I'm not talking about skin color, but I'm talking about night and day, light and dark. Why are they not getting what I was trying to say? I was pretty frustrated, and they could tell. Well, yes, I did pass the interview, but I was assigned to write a 10-page paper about my theology of darkness. And I'll tell you what, through that process, I learned quite a bit. I began this paper by revisiting the work of several scholars who have helped shape what is known as Black theology, such as William R. Jones and James H. Cone. Those scholars and others began changing in the 1960s and 70s that simple Christian narrative of Jesus being a white man with Northern European features and all of the negative consequences that come out of that falsehood. Well, during those decades, the Black theologians began pulling back the mask of racist and coded language that continues to permeate our culture and our churches. You know, there were even ministers in our own UU tradition, such as Reverend Mark Morrison Reed, Reverend Fred Wooden, and Reverend Jackie James, who we heard from this morning, who have worked over the decades to examine our own UU brand of racist language. You know, because as a lifelong UU, I was taught that light was synonymous with goodness, with universal love, with divine wisdom, and with God. You know, light-dark imagery is found in our hymnals. It's in our liturgy. It's often preached about in our pulpits as a way of expressing our UU understanding of the divine. In fact, our very own UU flaming chalice is often seen as a visual symbol of the light being revered as a beacon of hope to those lost out in the darkness. Phrases such as, "There's a light within each of us. Let your light shine. Let light triumph over darkness," are commonplace in our faith. You know, which on its face seems all well and good. Well, at least it does for us white folks. You know, but for those who are assigned the color black or brown at birth, and then having to hear those colors equated with darkness, with fear, with dirt, with feces, with everything bad and scary in our world, those words hurt, even if those speaking them are oblivious to that hurt. For as we heard this morning from our reading by Reverend Jackie James, in our culture, white is esteemed. It is heavenly, it's sunlight, it's clean, it's pure, it's immaculate, it's innocent and beautiful. At the same time, black is evil, wicked, gloomy, depressing, angry, sullen, black male, black list, black mark, black Monday, black mood, black-hearted, black plague, black mass, black market. You know, friends, it is important that we are careful with the words we choose to use. For if we use these words carelessly and mindlessly, they can and do hurt others. You know, of course, dark and light imagery predate our modern construction of race. Everyone on the planet, whether you have dark, light, or anything in between colored skin, have experienced the unknown quality of nighttime. You know, the difficulty of seeing what is in front of you, the fear of nocturnal predators, that sense of being alone. We also have all experienced the relief and glory of those first rays of sunlight in the morning. In daylight, we often experience a feeling of safety, of connection, of being able to fully see the world around us. So, you know, I do understand why we as a human species have related feelings of health and love and safety to our experiences of light. I mean, if we were nocturnal mammals, we might feel quite differently about this, but we aren't. You know, but I want to dig a little deeper into this issue. For I find a bigger problem with this idea of light versus dark. For, you know, this is actually a relic of our Christian past. For as you know, until quite recently, Unitarians and Universalists were both Christian denominations. So it's no wonder that our UU faith still has echoes of this binary theology of God versus the devil. The notion that there are these two opposite and opposing forces at play in the universe, battling for our souls. Think of the story of Job, and you get an idea of where this stems from. For, in the most influential collection of stories in Western culture, the Bible, it begins in the first chapter, in the first book, with Genesis 1. For in the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. Now, I know most of us here today don't consider ourselves Christian, but since we live in a country that is so influenced by this theology, we find this light and dark imagery everywhere in our current popular culture. I mean, think about Star Wars. Our young heroes, Leia and Luke, are both sporting white robes, where the evil Darth Vader is dressed in all black, of course, voiced by the black actor, James Earl Jones. In The Lord of the Rings, Gandalf evolves from Gandalf the Grey into Gandalf the White, who fights against the black riders on horseback and that embodiment of evil, that tall, dark tower of Sauron. I could go on and on with examples of how a Christian binary good must defeat evil theology is found everywhere, even for those who are not looking, even for those who are not religious. But I wonder, does that mean we need to throw out all of this light, dark language from our vocabulary? Maybe not. But perhaps we do need to widen our lens a bit more fully to examine these associations and where they come from and why we have them. We need to begin to acknowledge that light is not always good and that dark is not always bad. As Jackie James writes, darkness can bring relief from the blinding sun, from scorching heat, from exhausting labor. Night signals that permission to rest, to be with our loved ones, to conceive new life, to search our hearts, to remember our dreams. White things can be soft. They can be vulnerable, pallid, and ashen even. Light can be blinding, bleaching, and unnerving. You don't need to throw out all of your associations with darkness, for we all are afraid of the dark. We all have had those dark nights of the soul when joy and happiness seem to have left us. But perhaps we need to think more about the judgment we place on the various emotions within ourselves and others. Sadness is not a bad emotion, but one that can often help us grieve and come to terms with a loss. Anger is not evil darkness coming out and rearing its ugly head, but a necessary trait that can protect us when danger approaches. Fear is an excellent feeling for keeping us safe and away from harm. Depression is not wrong. It's part of who we are. All of these emotions that we are told are dark, we stop and we think about them. They're not bad. Simply a part of what makes us our full self. For darkness can be a place of rest, renewal, and reflection. For my understanding of the divine is greater than simply those things we deem to be good. For all of our experiences of being alive are part of what I call God. Often the the muses of creativity, the spirit of love, the God of wisdom is most with me in the dark. In fact, this very sermon I'm preaching right now was written in the middle of the night with just a candle and a flicker from the computer screen to light the room, and all those spirits swirling around, calling upon me and guiding my words. So I do wonder, when you are up in the middle of the night, can't sleep, you're worried, you don't know how to face another day, you're feeling alone, try asking the dark where the light comes from. Does your dark have a relationship with your light? Do they even know about each other? Or do they stay separate from one another? Maybe your darkness is with you all along, but it's hidden, out of sight, protected in a safe box where no one can hurt it. If so, I wonder if you might look for those times of twilights when your light and dark are together for just a short while, interacting with one another. And remember that no matter how dark things may seem, the dawn will come. Just as sure as the spring will follow the winter, just as soon as the earth turns back toward the sun every day. My friends, if you start to pay attention to this, God can be found in the shadows as well as in the sunrise. So may it be. Amen.